Tonight we present
The Disappearance of Jason Landry, Texas, 2020. On December 13, 2020, the small, rural roads of Luling, Texas, were quiet under the chilling winter air. Few drivers passed through these backcountry roads, lined with dense woods and wide-open fields. However, the tranquility was shattered when a young man's car was found abandoned, its engine still running, parked at an odd angle on a dirt road. This was the moment when the story of Jason Landry, a 21-year-old college student from Missouri City, Texas, would take an unnerving turn into mystery and confusion. Jason had been returning home to Missouri City for the holidays after completing his first semester at Texas State University in San Marcos. A quiet and introspective young man, Jason had made the drive many times before. On that fateful night, his parents, who were expecting him home, had last spoken to him as he passed through the town of Luling, only a short distance from his final destination. The call to his family was uneventful at first. Jason mentioned he was tired, but there were no signs of distress. However, as the night drew on and Jason failed to arrive home, his parents grew worried. That night, they tried calling him multiple times, but received no response. Their concern deepened as the hours passed and Jason's whereabouts remained unknown. The next morning, a call from a local sheriff's office in Luling alerted Jason's parents to a disturbing discovery. Jason's car had been found wrecked on Salt Flat Road, an isolated stretch of highway on the outskirts of town. The vehicle had been in a minor crash, a low-speed collision with a tree, but there was no evidence of serious injury. No blood, no sign of a struggle, and certainly no indication that something more sinister had taken place. What made this discovery even more chilling was that Jason himself was nowhere to be found. Luling, a small town with a population of just over 5,000, is located halfway between San Antonio and Houston. Known for its rich history and scenic country landscapes, the town has long been a quiet and peaceful place where little ever happens. Its most famous feature is the Luling Watermelon Thump, an annual festival celebrating the region's watermelon crop. The town's proximity to larger cities, like San Antonio and Austin, meant it was often used as a stopping point for travelers or those commuting between the two urban hubs. Despite its rural nature, Luling had seen an uptick in technological development in recent years, yet its isolated roads, old ranches, and forests remained largely untouched by the sprawling cities around it. Jason's disappearance stood out in stark contrast to the idyllic, peaceful atmosphere of Luling. While the town was small and had few crimes, Jason's case would become a point of intense interest not only for the local community, but for true crime enthusiasts across the country. Upon learning of Jason's missing person case, the authorities launched an immediate search effort. At first, investigators focused on the vehicle, analyzing the scene for clues. They noted that the car was found running, with the engine still warm, as if Jason had just stepped out or been removed from the vehicle in a hurry. There were no signs of foul play inside the car, no traces of blood or evidence of violence, and nothing indicating that the car had been stolen or forcibly abandoned. The most unusual detail, however, was the discovery that Jason's personal belongings, his wallet, phone, and keys, were missing, but his shoes were found neatly placed outside the car, as if he had taken them off deliberately before leaving. The road where Jason's car had been found was secluded, with few other vehicles passing through, especially at night. A motorist had reported seeing Jason standing near the wrecked vehicle, but when the motorist approached, the young man had simply disappeared into the woods. This witness could not confirm if Jason was injured or what he had been doing at the time. The eerie detail of the shoes, coupled with the absence of any tracks or physical evidence that led authorities to believe Jason had simply wandered off, set off alarm bells. At this point, the search expanded into the woods surrounding Salt Flat Road. Police dogs were brought in, and volunteers combed the area in the hopes of finding any trace of Jason. Despite the intense search efforts, no sign of him would appear. As hours turned into days and days into weeks, the mystery of Jason Landry's disappearance deepened. His phone records were analyzed, but investigators found no meaningful clues. The last known communication Jason had made was a call to his family on the evening of December 13th, 2020. His phone had no history of further calls or messages, and it appeared that after the crash, Jason's phone had gone silent. The authorities attempted to reconstruct the timeline of events. According to the motorist who had passed by, it seemed like Jason was standing by his car, possibly dazed, possibly confused, though the witness was unclear about the young man's demeanor. The mystery of why Jason would leave the relative safety of his car, especially in such a rural and isolated area, made no sense. The road itself was not particularly dangerous, certainly not a place one would find themselves in a state of emergency unless something more sinister had occurred. But even stranger still was the fact that, despite extensive searches, no one had been able to track down any physical trace of Jason. Not a footprint, not a hair, not a shred of clothing had been found beyond the car. Authorities were baffled by his disappearance. An intelligent young man, a college student, with no history of mental health issues or personal conflict that would suggest he would willingly disappear. And yet, no one could account for where he had gone. Despite the confusion, the case had some peculiarities that made it even more baffling. It wasn't just the abandonment of the car and Jason's belongings. It was the complete lack of physical evidence, the absence of any conclusive signs of foul play. Jason's car had been found running, his shoes neatly placed outside, and his personal belongings gone. But his phone had no further records. Authorities could not trace any additional messages or calls made from his phone, nor was there any activity on his social media accounts in the days after his disappearance. Even more troubling was the discovery of a strange connection to Jason's background. Several weeks before the incident, Jason had been in a minor fender bender while driving home from Texas State, but had shown little signs of distress or anxiety. There was no prior indication of mental health struggles or financial troubles. He appeared to be a stable, grounded individual. And yet, the search for answers to his disappearance seemed to lead nowhere. As the search efforts dwindled, the cold chill of mystery crept over the case. No more witnesses came forward, no more leads appeared. Theories emerged. Some speculated that Jason had run away, perhaps overwhelmed by the pressures of school and life. Others believed foul play might be involved, but there was no evidence to support such a claim. And so, the question remains: what happened to Jason Landry on that fateful night in December? Was it a case of misfortune, a tragic accident? Or was there something darker at play, something that authorities had yet to uncover? With the case still unsolved, Jason's disappearance hangs in the air like an unsolved riddle, a chilling enigma waiting for someone to crack its code. Would the truth ever emerge? Would Jason ever be found? By the time the new year rolled around, Jason Landry's disappearance had started to feel like an unsolved mystery, a haunting, unresolved question hanging over Luling, Texas. But then, in early January 2021, a crucial piece of the puzzle emerged when new evidence was found during the course of the investigation, suggesting that perhaps the case was not as closed as it seemed. The case had remained stagnant for weeks with little progress, but a breakthrough came when investigators, after re-examining the area surrounding Salt Flat Road, discovered a surveillance video from a nearby business. The video, taken from a gas station a few miles from the crash site, captured footage of a car that seemed to resemble Jason's vehicle passing through the area around the time of his crash. This raised questions. Could Jason have been driven to the area by someone else before the accident occurred? Or was he potentially in some sort of distress prior to the crash? Was this an accident, or could something more nefarious have been involved? In the video, Jason's car appeared to be driving erratically, almost as if the driver was lost or confused. It was clear that the vehicle had been in a hurry, yet there was no sign of other cars or individuals on the road nearby. The video sparked fresh theories about Jason's final movements, suggesting that something may have happened just before his crash, something that could explain his sudden disappearance. The discovery of the surveillance footage reignited the investigation, and authorities began to focus on one central question. Where was Jason after the crash, and why didn't he make it home? New search efforts were initiated around the area where the video had been filmed, hoping to find something, anything, that could shed light on what had really happened that night. Despite the promising new lead, the investigation still faced many obstacles. The rural terrain around Luling was difficult to navigate, and although search teams combed through nearby woods and fields, nothing new of substance emerged. There were still no solid leads, no clear indications of where Jason might have gone after leaving his car behind. However, the search efforts continued, and the community, initially stunned by the young man's disappearance, rallied together. Volunteers showed up by the dozens, walking through brush and swampland, checking abandoned buildings, and reviewing any remaining footage or physical evidence. Despite all their best efforts, the search for Jason Landry seemed to lead to a dead end. The days and weeks that followed were filled with emotional tension, as Jason's family tried to keep hope alive, but also struggled with the increasing realization that they might never get the answers they so desperately needed. As more time passed without any answers, speculation about Jason's disappearance only grew. Some believed that Jason might have been the victim of a tragic accident, suffering some form of shock or confusion that led him to wander into the woods. There were reports that the area around Salt Flat Road could be treacherous, with low visibility and sharp turns that could easily disorient a driver. It was possible that Jason, disoriented after the crash, simply stumbled off the road and succumbed to the harsh elements. Others speculated that Jason had been the victim of foul play. His disappearance, after all, was an eerie one. His car had been found running, and the fact that his phone had gone silent immediately afterward seemed like a deliberate attempt to cover his tracks. Some felt that perhaps Jason had been involved in a dangerous situation prior to the crash, possibly with someone he knew. After all, the area was remote, and Jason's decision to leave the safety of his vehicle was highly unusual. There was also the theory that Jason might have been under some kind of emotional or psychological distress. Some friends and acquaintances of Jason reported that he had been struggling with some personal issues, though nothing severe enough to explain a complete disappearance. Yet, others argued that Jason, a bright and capable college student, had no reason to vanish. His life seemed to be moving in a positive direction. He was set to graduate soon and had a supportive family and group of friends. The theory that he had willingly left behind his life didn't seem to hold water. The breakthrough came when authorities decided to take a closer look at Jason's phone records and social media activity once again. After weeks of investigation, they found that the young man had communicated with a friend shortly before the crash. The text messages exchanged indicated that Jason had been feeling uneasy, nervous even, about his trip. He had mentioned to a friend that he was lost and unsure of his surroundings, but that he was trying to stay calm. His last message, just minutes before his car was found wrecked, read, "I'm really scared right now, don't know where I am." This unsettling message, coupled with the surveillance footage of his erratic driving, suggested that Jason had been experiencing some form of distress in the moments leading up to the crash. It became clear that the young man was not just lost, he was frightened. This new information caused investigators to reconsider the possibility of foul play, leading to a new wave of interviews and follow-up questions with people who had been in contact with Jason in the days leading up to his disappearance. Investigators also re-interviewed the motorist who had first reported seeing Jason standing beside his wrecked car. This time, they were able to clarify the details of that encounter. The witness revealed that, though Jason had been alone, there had been another car in the vicinity that had driven past at a high speed shortly before the wreck. While the motorist could not see who was in the other car, it raised the possibility that Jason had been followed or had been involved in some sort of confrontation just before the crash. Despite these developments, the case of Jason Landry remains unsolved to this day. While there have been numerous theories, ranging from a tragic accident to a more sinister explanation, none have provided definitive answers. The investigation continues, and the mystery of what happened to Jason on that cold December night in 2020 endures. For his family, the journey has been one of unrelenting pain. His mother, Kathy Landry, has stated that they will not give up searching for Jason, no matter how long it takes. The search for closure is as crucial as ever, but it remains elusive. Jason's disappearance has had a profound effect on the community, raising awareness about the complexities of missing persons cases in rural areas and leaving a legacy of grief and unanswered questions. Jason's case is a haunting reminder of how quickly a life can change, how a simple drive home can unravel into a mystery that defies explanation. What happened that night? Was it a tragic accident, or was there something darker at play? The answers remain locked in the dense woods surrounding Luling, Texas, and in the silence of a phone left unanswered. As the years go by and new cases emerge, the disappearance of Jason Landry stands as a stark testament to the vulnerability of the human experience and the chilling reality that sometimes no answers come. For now, the only certainty is that Jason Landry remains missing, and the question of what truly happened to him lingers in the minds of all who hear his story.
The questions don't end here, nor does our pursuit. If this story unveiled something you never expected to discover, then you're in the right place. Remember to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this tale with others who, like you, are drawn to the unknown. Here, mystery always finds its voice, until we meet again, where the inexplicable will once again serve as our starting point.